All right, it is week 2 for Wirecast Wednesday. I'm Eric, Sarah, and Marcus over here also joining us today. So we've got a few things that we want to go through to help make your stream perhaps a little bit better. Perhaps you've got some kids that are good with Wirecast. We can do the scoreboard. We did that last week. We're not doing that this week. We're good with the scoreboard. Maybe we want to go to the next level of things we can do within Wirecast. So we're going to kind of break down a few things. And one of those things is the image carousel, and then I call it a logo screen. You might have a different term for it, but basically a screen so that, and especially helpful if you have announcers, and even if you don't have announcers, if you have a logo big and bold and right in the middle of your screen, anybody that's watching knows, oh, I'm not supposed to be hearing anything, or I'm not supposed to be hearing something else that is playing. I'm not supposed to be hearing announcers or anything else. I'm supposed to be hearing the music that I am, or I'm hearing generic background music, whatever that is. So we're doing a logo screen. We're also going to talk a little bit about soundboard settings. I know that is always something that people, when they have that soundboard, there's a lot of knobs on there. What are they, and what should they be set at? So I'm going to go over that real quick. And then also default settings for media files. If you've got commercials or pre-produced videos that you've made in there, maybe you've made them in Final Cut or iMovie, anything like that, you can drag those right into your Wirecast. I'm sorry, I keep bumping the table here. You can drag those right into Wirecast, and you can actually set the defaults of what do they do when they are done playing? Do they remove? Do they hold? Do they loop? And you can change that in the newest versions. If you're still on 5 or 6, that was always a pain. You had to change that every time, right? Well, now on 7, 8, and 9, and 10 of Wirecast, you can drag that in, and you can actually click it as a default, and it saves that settings all the time. So we'll talk more about that here in just a second. For the meantime, though, I'm going to open up my template that I used on Friday, and that was when we had our game of the week in Centennial as they took on Sutton in that game. And let me share my desktop with everybody here. Everybody seeing Wirecast okay there? Thumbs up. Sarah, good on that? Okay. So one thing that we had, and I don't have my mini recorder plugged in, so I'm going to go to my main shot. I'm going to take out my mini recorder, but what I can add in is a video capture that's got my web camera, because I got that plugged in for later. So we'll bring that in there, and you can see that is really way too close. So I go to my scale, and I can always scale that way down or up. And since I'm going to leave that a little small because we have a cool overlay that I believe Marcus inspired Taylor to create. So I'm going to move my box over here. This is not something I would recommend on a normal stream, but just so you can see that, because I have a white wall behind me, you can see the overlay there. So you can see what I've got for the different layers within my main shot here. So I've got my Pro webcam, and I'm going to move that down there to the bottom. Move that to the bottom. I've got my Strive overlay. That is what you see here, and that was created in a text I'm sure Taylor would have done it in Pixelmator, but you can do it in Photoshop. You can do it in all sorts of different things. 1920 wide, 1080 tall, and then you just make the font the right size, and when you bring in that file, now you don't have to scale it or anything like that. It just comes in at the right size, sits up in the corner, voila. Marcus has a whole class, I think, on part of that, right? So that's a cool way to bring that in. I think Taylor was inspired by seeing something that Marcus had done. So thank you, Marcus, for that. And we also have the codec. So we would be pretty close to being ready to do a ball game. I'd do a screen capture for the scoreboard, and off we would go. We talked about the layers and onions and ogres last week, so we don't need to do that this week. What we can do this week is something that I called the music shot. You see that here. My music shot has got this image carousel and a song with it. Well, the image carousel, I want to show you real quick here. If I go up to my properties, this is where you can set up your carousel. And basically what it is a carousel is an automatically rotating your photos. And so let's say that you've got 4 photos of the football team. You might be streaming volleyball on a Tuesday. but you've got 4 really good photos from the football game on Friday. You can bring those 4 photos in, and it will automatically cycle through them, and you can change. You can set how long between each change, how long the transition is, and then down here at the bottom is actually where your files are. So if I click on these 3 buttons here, that is where I can find the different things that I've got. And because of last week, I know that I should put all of my files that I want to put in Wirecast in a specific Wirecast folder. Now I can just go to my desktop and I can go to my Wirecast folder, and here is all of my Wirecast files. So I might have this Strive overlay. That's where I put it in there. I might also have this Region 5 logo tag copy. This was the PNG that they sent us. So I'm going to select on that, and I hit open. And what it did is it just added it to the top of my list. Then you can see over here, I've got arrows, so I can arrow these up and down. So if I wanted to reach, right now I've got our game of the week feature image that we created, and then we've got Region 5 systems, we've got Cornerstone Bank, we've got Truck Center Companies, and we've got Region 5 systems again if I wanted to do that. Really cool and really easy way to incorporate a couple of different logos, maybe a couple of different photos of, if you've got advertisers, this could be a business, a couple of businesses that are cycling through. If you've got cool headshots of the Strive crew that is working that ball game, this would be a cool way to share who is doing play-by-play, who's running Wirecast, who's running the cameras tonight. And you could cycle through a little player card like you might create for the team. Well, your Strive crew can have that as well. And that might be something that you put in an image carousel. All different sorts of possibilities. And the cool thing about this image carousel is you can actually change the size of this. So let's say we wanted to change this to 9, and I'm not even sure what's going to happen here, but I'm going to change it to 1920 by 1080. And you see I've zoomed way in there. So I've made it way too big, but somebody that's better at math, 1200 by 630 is still too big. I'm trying to go 16 by 9. Marcus, any thoughts on what size that would be? Oh, wait, here we go. How about 854 by 480? That should be fairly close. Yeah, 854 by 480 should be the size of your player that we've set up for everybody. Aha, that's the one. That I knew I had those numbers in my head somewhere. So 854 by 480. Now I've created this image carousel that is exactly as big as the player. And then so all of these images down here are going to fit within that image. See, Region 5 is just a little bit too big. That's not a great when they created that, it was just a little bit right to the edges, which isn't always a great design thing. You can see how it comes right up to the edge. So they might squish down your spacing in here if you're Region 5. Cornerstone's pretty good to see. I got a little bit of space on the top, bottom, and all the sides. So the point is I can change this image carousel. So what I've done is I've created something that will cover the entire screen, which is 854 by 480. And I've brought in all of these different logos that have been created. And these are different sizes, by the way. But the cool thing is it does fit for the most part. You see I've got a little bit of black. That's because this feature image is 1021 by 580, which is the right size for our website and Twitter, stuff like that. And I just happened to drag it in there so it doesn't quite fit the same way. Now what's cool is you could take this back down, and I think, yeah, see, I'm just moving that there, but I can squish this back down. And now, again, with my centering, I can drop that right in the center. Now, what's cool is if I really wanted to, I could come back to my shot layers, and you'd be bringing in your media recorder. I'm going to bring in my web camera, and I'm going to move my web camera down to the bottom. So what looks pretty cool here is I'm going to stretch out my web camera, which comes in a different resolution. Now you can see that I've got my image carousel with nothing behind it, and they're all PNGs. They're not JPEGs, right? Now these are just going to rotate for as long as I would want them to. The other thing is that I dropped in some music to this. So I've got music actually that will fit behind this. So when I take this shot live, we're going to see the live camera with the logos on top of it, and we're going to hear the music. So that is a perfect way, and you can hear my music starting there. That is a perfect way. And I'm going to mute that though. That is a perfect way to still be able to see our screen, see what is happening, see that the football game is at a timeout, or that the volleyball game is at a timeout. But now I can still have my rotating sponsors. I could have all sorts of different photos. The possibilities are kind of endless behind that. That's something that's very cool. And honestly, Taylor showed me that last Friday, and I was like, dude, you got to show me that sooner. So he finally did, and I'm very thankful for it. So what I've created was now my main shot, which is this one. And again, this is the one that I would have some audio with, and I would have the soundboard plugged in, and I don't have anything plugged into the soundboard, and the soundboard's not plugged into Wirecast, so that's why nothing's coming through right now. But I would have my main shot, then I would have my music shot, and there it would go. You see my music is bouncing over here now, and away I would go. So that is the image carousel is something that is a really cool way to be able to incorporate perhaps some logos of sponsors or class projects, whatever it might be. And again, if you leave them as with nothing behind them, you'll have that black screen. So I can just as easily, I can remove that web camera. Now I just have that black screen. So I don't see anything else behind it. And you can also see that I've shrunk that down, right? So I can click on my image carousel and I can make that smaller. So maybe I wanted to, maybe I only wanted to have that up in the corner during a game, right? So I can bring my web camera back in, and now I've got Cornerstone Bank and Truck Center companies and the game of the week. All of those are rotating up in the corner. They don't have to be full screen. They don't have to be big, right? I could make this image carousel taller, perhaps. Let's see if I can get that to squish. And it looks like it's going to constrain everything a little bit. So it's going to keep everything. But, you know, if I had some sponsors or something I wanted to kind of scroll through during the game, I could pop those down there in the image carousel and leave them for there. Cool stuff. Hopefully your mind is turning with what you can do with an image carousel. And all that is going to, in 9, that is an overlay. And so that's image carousel is what you're looking for there. So one other thing that I wanted to add as far as the defaults on media files. In 5 and 6, if you've been with Strive long enough that you had Wirecast 5 or 6, you know that it was kind of a pain in the butt to bring in your media file and then remember that I have to go change the settings for it to, you know, what to do when the video file was over. And I'm kind of talking about commercials. I'm talking about any pre-recorded, pre-edited video that you drug into Wirecast. It was kind of a pain to make sure you had the settings right. Well, it's not a pain anymore. If I hit my plus button and I go find a media file, and again, where am I saving all of my media files? On the desktop in a folder labeled Wirecast. It makes it so much easier to find everything. Here's my MP4 for Region 5 Health Systems, actually, the parenting style that works. I hit open, and it brings it right in. And if I go to my properties, this default of when finished, remove, and remember position even when not live, because I've already set that as the default, I'm good to go. It's not a bad idea to double check it, but I'm good to go with having it in there like that. And so that when that video file is done, it will remove it and I'll be ready to move on to the next thing. That's the same way with this York Tech. You can see here. And oh, by the way, how nice is 7, 8, and 9 to be able to just click through all of these and then not have to go back into the sources and the show source settings in 5 and 6. 5 and 6, old school, this way, much better. But let's say that I wanted to have a media file that did not do one of my defaults, right? Let's say I wanted a media file that I wanted to keep looping all the time. And again, I go to my desktop and I go to my Wirecast, and let's say I wanted for whatever reason, I wanted something to just loop over and over and over again, right? Let's say I wanted this song to do that. Now I can change this. I can go to loop, and I don't have to remember the position when not live so that it can jump in the middle. Now, as long as I don't hit set default, only this shot will be affected. See, all my other ones are still on remove. But my song, it's on loop because I changed that. So you can always hit set default. If you change one thing, it will automatically save that anytime you bring in one of those types of media files back in there. So very cool. Very excited about that. Having this music shot, I think, is amazing. It is so cool. And that image carousel thing, I wish Taylor would have shown me that a little earlier, but that is okay. One other thing that you can probably do with this, and I'm just throwing things out there now. Going to my overlays, and I'm going to my my image carousel that I've already created, and you see that it comes up really big, right? Well, I don't want that, so I'm going to resize this fairly small, but I'm just going to drop it over here on this corner. So now, when I make that transition to go live, now my main shot has my overlay, which is going to stay there the whole time, has my main camera shot, which is this one right here, and I've got my image carousel going in the bottom. That could be kind of cool. If I'm doing a newscast, then I can create perhaps some other graphic that comes in here with maybe the list of our announcers that just is going to stay there the whole time. And I've got a live video feed over here. I've got my sponsors rotating at the bottom. I've got an overlay up at the top about Strive Live, hashtag Strive Schools. Really fun stuff that you can play with. And again, I'm playing around with my web camera that doesn't have quite the same stretch as what your G20 or X810 or G40 or any of those other camcorders would have. That's why I came in a little funny, but I can always, scale that up if I wanted to too. And I can still have it. And you can still see that that's still up there, and Cornerstone and Region 5 and all that rotating down there. Really fun, really cool. I'm going to stop there, and I want, if Marcus or James, who are on here, Marcus from Johnson County Central, James Reed now at Holdridge. I'm still getting used to that, James. But if you guys have any questions about the carousel or thoughts already perhaps on how you guys might use it, I would certainly entertain those now.
Hey, Eric, I don't know if it pops up on your screen, but in the chat box, both James and Marcus posted some questions.
Really?
Mm-hmm. I can always read them to you.
Please do. I don't see them because I'm sharing my screen.
Okay, so
there's Scott. Well, we got a whole bunch of people in here. Well, no, I don't see. Yeah. Okay, go ahead, Sarah.
Okay, so the first one James posted back when you were talking about the pictures. He asked, how many pictures can you put in there?
Great question. Let's find out. Image carousel. So I've got, 5 in there right now? Let's just keep adding the same thing and see. Let's go with a Cornerstone again. And you see, and it always puts the newest thing that you added always goes right to the top. And let's add Truck Center. So that gives me, there's 7. There's 8. That's not a very good logo. So at least 8. James, if that helps. I suppose we could probably keep going until we've figured out what our max is. And notice I am not hitting the plus button. I'm just hitting the three dots over here to find everything. So at least 8. I wouldn't be surprised if somewhere around 10 was our limit in some way, shape, or form. But quite a few, I guess, is the point.
Awesome. Yeah, he said 8 is great. So, and that's plenty. Marcus asked if that also supports PNG file.
That is exactly what all of these are PNG files. Well, this one, our game of the week might have been a JPEG, but all of these other ones are all PNG files. So yes, PNGs, and in fact, that's how you will get that cool effect of the fact that there's no background to it, right? Is with the PNG. PNG with just the words and the lettering like that, that would be pretty cool to have. JPEG is going to have your colored background. So that would like you would have this rectangle would be white. If we had exported these Region 5 systems as a JPEG, you would actually have a white background. Have a white background this whole size. Not unsimilar to what I have with the photo. So PNG would be the way to go. That gives you that cool effect of the letters just floating out there.
Cool.
Any other questions? Scott, I can't even see everybody that's in here now. Scott was in here a little bit ago. And all of this, by the way, is still getting recorded, so it'll be up in the dashboard later. Was that it for questions for now, Sarah?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
Then one other thing that I wanted to show everybody today was soundboard and the soundboard settings. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing, but on Zoom, I want to go and I'm going to change my video to my web camera. Okay. So you can see the web camera here. We'll always get plenty of questions about what everything should be. And most of our schools are using, sorry, that is terribly, once again, that is terribly not squared up. I apologize about that. Most of our schools are on this Behringer USB soundboard. These things are amazing. And for the price, if you take care of them, they will last you a long time. So quick refresher, everything works in a channel all the way up and down. So all of these knobs, all the way down to the bottom, all one channel, all channel 2, channel 3, channel 4. Where you get into some other stuff, and this is where it becomes a 12 channel, is that you actually have the ability, if you were doing line inputs, most notably, think of it as a band. Your amp that you plug your guitar into probably has an output that is a line. So you can actually have a line here, a line here, 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 here. That's how you end up with 12 inputs. Usually, though, microphone-wise, we're dealing with XLR, so that's why we've got the 4 XLR inputs generally. But if you had a system, or perhaps you are taking a line out of another soundboard, we've got a few schools that are actually hooking up with radio stations. And so if you've got a way to come out of that radio station soundboard and into this soundboard, you can actually use the line input on one of these channels, or you can use any of these over here, and they are labeled down here. So these knobs are controlling 5 and 6. These knobs, these 3 down here, they're controlling 7 and 8. And then you've got 9 and 10, 9 and 10, 11 and 12, 11 and 12. So those are all that. But for these 4 channels, these first 4 channels, all controlled top to bottom. So at the very top, you've got your black knob. That's the gain. That is the sensitivity of the microphone that you're talking into. So if you've got an announcer who is maybe a little quiet and they don't put a lot of oomph through the voice, sometimes that's genetic. Sometimes some people have booming voices. I get told I boom sometimes. I don't need as much gain. Some people talk quiet and they need more gain. They need more sensitivity to that microphone. Keep in mind that the more you turn this gain up, the more chance you actually have of getting a little hiss to the microphone. So that is a setting that you got to be listening very carefully, so as you don't just blast that all the way up and end up with a hissing sound. That's the first thing. If you call and ask, hey, Eric, why is my channel hissing? I'm probably going to tell you to turn your gain down a little bit and turn your volume up. So I usually start when before I plug my headset in, which is now, right? I plug my headset in to the channel, and then I'm going into the phones plug over there. You guys can see that kind of a little bit. So I'm into the phones, and I'm into my mic channel 1. I'm going to turn my gain now up to, I usually start about 2 o'clock there. I put my compressor. By the way, the compressor on this board, fantastically handy. A compressor is basically going to level out your audio within this channel. So if you are a quiet person and you talk quietly for a lot of the time, it's going to amplify you a little bit. If all of a sudden you get real excited, though, it's going to suppress that audio so it doesn't blast out whatever speakers your person is watching on. So this compressor, I usually run this kind of no matter what at about 3 o'clock or so. You don't want to overly compress, and you don't usually want to under compress or not compress it at all. But to get the most level sound, I usually go somewhere between 2 and 3 o'clock. Then these three you can see kind of, I know that is a little pixelated. These are your equalizers. So you kids that love to crank up the bass in the car, well, that's this right here. That's the low tones. And then you've got your mid, which is usually where your vocal ranges are. And then you've got your cymbals, your hi-hat, your squealy noises. Those are up here on the equalizer. Also, they have this low cut, and I know that's really tough to read. Focus, focus. But that says low cut, and if you push that down, what that will do is it will basically cut out the bass. Even if you had this turned all the way down, it will really cut out those low frequencies. That low cut is especially useful if you have a microphone outside on a windy night. What's the first thing you hear if you have a microphone and it's windy? You hear that. Even if everything else sounds pretty clear, you kind of always have that low rumble. If you push your low cut on, or in this case, you push it down, it will cut out those lower frequencies and can really help your sound if you're outside. Going down the channel, then your FX send is what this is, and we have an FX send up here, and we also have our main, if I know where my camera is, we have our main FX send on this version is our red knob here. So what we can do is we can actually push the sound. Whoa, 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 where'd I go? Goodness gracious, look out. Going crazy. No, get out of there. Okay, so we can actually push all of the sound through this channel, through the FX channel, and that would be another way to listen. So if you've got multiple headsets and you don't have a splitter, I'd plug one headset, block that. One headset into the phones, and I'd put the other one into FX send. Make sure that my FX send knob is up here, and I'm making sure that my FX send knob is up here as well on both these channels if I have them plugged in. Pan, and again, I know that is impossible to read, but this one says pan. If this is turned this way, guess what? You're only going to hear out of your left ear. If you have it turned this way, it's only out of your right ear. Pan, unless you're doing something really funky and crazy and you are more advanced than 99% of what you're doing for a sports game or activity, more likely than not, pan should be straight up and down at 12 o'clock. And it actually has a little self-stop right at the top. And then you have your microphone volume level down here at the bottom. And again, if you blast that all the way, you're probably going to get a hissing sound. So I usually start with my gain and my volume at 2 o'clock, and then I adjust. Okay, am I a little quieter than my other person? This is where it's important to have your person that's running Wirecast, not just the people with their headphones plugged in here, but you actually need somebody with the headphones plugged in right here. That needs to be happening so that you can hear. And what you don't want is to have somebody sound a lot louder than their counterpart. sure, people get excited. That's okay. Sometimes that gets louder. But if you're just talking back and forth, you should both sound about the same volume, even if you don't actually talk at the same volume. That's where these sensitivities can come in and can really help as well. And then also something to keep an eye on, your master slider. I would run that master slider right there at 0. Again, I apologize for the fuzziness there. Don't go all the way up here, and don't leave it like right there, because right there, now I've got to crank everything else up over here. And if I have it blasted out here, boy, now I'm turning my volume and my sensitivity down, and it's just not as good a listening experience. There's a reason that they put those lines right there in the middle for you. Just leave that at 0 and adjust accordingly within these. Also, these buttons. This is where it's telling different things, where it's basically sending the output. So this top one says to phones/control room. So if I push that down, I'm sending an output of the output of the board is now going to the phones and the control room, but it's not going to the USB. I don't want that. So I take that off. To main mix, that's going here. Well, that's fine, but I might not be able to hear because it's not going to my phones. All right, so I leave that up. And my FX send, what's it going to? Is it going to the control room or not? Ours work best when all 3 of these are not pressed. So all 3 of these are up right now. If you have troubles or somebody pushes a button, push these back and forth until you can hear both through the soundboard and through the headset. So I should be able to hear through the headset, and especially be able to hear through here on the Wirecast, and of course on Wirecast itself, through those bars bouncing up and down. So that is that. And I'm crooked again. And sorry. That is that. Are there other questions on soundboards or anything else? We'll open it up to general Wirecast questions now. You can either unmute yourself or type in the chat, and well, there's my chat button. 8 is enough. Scott went off to lunch. PNG. Yeah.
I have a question, Eric.
Go for it.
How can you get a feed from Wirecast out to like a remote TV that would be in the Commons? Can you do a wired hookup for that?
We use when we've done outputs from Wirecast, most of our laptops have that HDMI output, and so we are actually just plugging an HDMI cord into that and run that. However, generally when we're outputting, we are outputting to like a monitor that's only about 10 feet away, so our announcers can see what the output of Wirecast is, so that they know if the camera people are showing, they've zoomed in on the band, then the announcer, I can see that. I don't have to be real close to Wirecast, and I can still see the output, and I can mention something about the band or the band instructor, whoever that is. But we do have some schools that are taking that HDMI out. They might be converting it to like an SDI cable, and then they've got a long, it's kind of built into the wall that they can go plug it into something out in the Commons. That, by the way, will also get you a live feed, as opposed to maybe having an Apple TV or a smart TV out in the Commons, and you've just pulled up the stream, which is 30 to 60 seconds behind. If you're coming directly out of Wirecast, you'll actually get a live feed, and your delay will be next to nothing, basically.
So what settings would I have to do in Wirecast to do that?
Not a thing, actually. Let me hold on a second here. Let me share my screen, and I'll show you. See if I can do this again. I'll get you guys over there. So if I go up to output, that multi-viewer output, that's what I'm configuring. So I configure this color LCD, and again, it's not plugged in. It's just kind of always there for me, since I usually have that plugged in. But I select that color LCD or select whatever that output is, and it should shoot it. You might have to click if you had a second screen pulled in here. You would click right in here, and you can tell it what the monitor should see, and it should see the monitor should be the LCD screen, which is actually right now is my laptop. And you can actually have two slots for stuff. Like if you wanted everyone to see your preview and your live screen, you could do that. I don't know that I'd want to do that. But then you can select, you want to see live, you want to see just part of one thing within Wirecast. You could do that if you wanted to, but I would sure recommend just doing the live, and then you hit OK. And now my LCD screen, because that's what I just selected, my LCD screen has the live around it, and that's what would be shooting out to your commons area if that's where you had it.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
So I've looked at that more because before we started Strive, we put a TV in the cafeteria, and I had just got those HDMI to SDI converters, and had a company come in and run coax cable, and I just put my SDI adapters on that coax cable, and I can run it through there. So I just have little powered boxes on both ends. Now, since we've added Strive, I've tried to do different things. Right now, I'm just exporting out a camera shot. So it's basically still as if there was no Strive. And then, not to complicate things, but we have our multi-camera switcher. So I am actually exporting the program out from that. So again, I'm not exporting out Wirecast. Now, I thought about exporting out Wirecast, but previously we had some problems. If we were doing that, it would kind of lock up our Wirecast. But we're on a PC and we were on an older version. So I think we've solved that. But I've looked at an adapter, because if you're doing what Eric says, that's actually only showing you the video and it's not actually grabbing the audio. So I've looked, and Blackmagic does have a thing where I could send DVI over SDI, and then but it also has an audio input. And so then I would just get a headphone splitter on the computer, and so whoever's running the computer has their headphones, but I'd have that split off and actually be sending that to the TV, and then the TV would actually get the full broadcast.
The full broadcast. That would be a cool way to do it too. You said that was a Blackmagic thing. Do you remember what that was?
I will look. I'll put it in the chat.
Okay. Put it in the chat, and then I'll try to copy that into Slack as well when I put the recording in there.
It's pretty expensive though.
Is it?
Yeah. It's $400.
Yo. Thanks.
And like on your Mac, you would have to convert it from HDMI to DVI.
Right.
On our PC, we're coming out anyway on a DVI. So.
Okay. Okay. There's my group chat. I see it now. Cool. It doesn't work always the same way. Yeah, and that's the beauty of what we have found at all of the schools that we work with is some that kind of money comes up, and some that kind of money doesn't come up, and so it's fun trying to work through the different things where schools have different needs and wants, and as budgets allow. So that's all part of that. Cool. Any other questions? We got through everything there on the chat anyway.
If you really want to send just the camera, though, you just should get a different menu recorder or an input. Like instead of your menu recorder, you're using a different one, and so you'd still get your input from the camera and your output through Thunderbolt. But then there's probably another one that has a pass through out.
Yeah.
I'm trying to.
Yeah, you're right. It's taller than a mini recorder, but it's basically the same thing is what it looks like. I think you're right, Marcus. You're right. And then you could actually get what is coming out of, you'd be picking up what is coming out of one camera. Is that what you're thinking?
Well, I think that's probably what it would default to, but then I think within the Blackmagic software, you can tell it to actually behave like an external monitor.
Gotcha.
But I'd have to look it up again.
Okay.
Because we used to have something that was kind of like that, but it was a USB. It was like the thing that you guys used to have too. So I'd have to look it up.
Gotcha. Okay. Sarah, do you have any questions today?
No, I do not.
Okay, I just
I
checking.
do not. Thank you for asking. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. I just want everyone to feel involved in some way. Marcus, did you see the chat? Yes, you did. Thank you. Beautiful. All right. I think I have imparted enough wisdom for one day. So,
could you
please
do me a favor? Can you test? I don't mean it'd take a little bit, but I just wonder what the impact on CPU is on the image carousel of like your Strive Schools live logo thing. If I made multiple ones of those, and then like I could like switch hashtags like every like 30 seconds, if it would have a negative impact on my CPU. Now, like so obviously, if you resize it smaller, it'd help.
Yes. You know what? I use this image carousel Friday at Centennial, and I did not notice anything that would have been alarming. And this, what I was streaming on is what I'm on right now, which is not a new MacBook by any stretch of the imagination. And I am managing my memory basically every day on it. JC had it originally. Austin had it for a while. So there's a lot of stuff on the laptop that I was streaming on, and I did not notice a jump in CPU that you wouldn't see if you played a video, for a commercial or anything like that. So there might have been a little jump, but nothing that should have been alarming by any means. But that's
my other idea. I mean, it would cover up the Strive logo. But anyway, if you had your scoreboard and like if you use the horizontal one, you could cover up the Strive logo, and then you could put your sponsors right in that little tiny spot and have those rotate every minute or two.
Right. Yeah, absolutely you could. As long as you throw a Strive logo in there.
Yeah.
For one of those, right? Yeah, that would be very cool. Or even the overlay up here in the corner, like you said, rotating hashtags or social media accounts would be cool to do that as well.
And it's quicker than creating a playlist, because I thought about like throwing in images that like someone's taken on a phone or a camera. That's actually a lot easier than having to have them put it into a iMovie and then export out a video. You could do that mid-game.
Yep. Yeah, you can do that mid-game. You can drop those. You can switch things out. You can you could get all sorts of stuff that was different in there. Let's do the image carousel. And what I thought was cool was it was easy to move these things around too. Like if you wanted a different order than what you actually brought it in that first time, or delete one, you hit the X and off you go then. And oops. Oh yeah, put it down in that corner. So yeah, it's pretty slick when it's working right. And they really weren't that hard to bring in. The biggest thing is, like I said, if you've got your desktop organized and you have that folder for Wirecast files, and then you bring stuff into Wirecast, that makes it a lot easier to find everything. So even if you have to delete the carousel out of a shot, where those files are, real easy to go back and add them again.
I do have one more question.
Yes, sir.
And back to the audio board. A lot of times if I have somebody commentating, we try to have them test audio before we start, but a lot of times they're testing it when there's not much going on. And so the tendency is to have that crowd mic and what ends up being too loud. Any recommendations on what you would tell kids on crowd mic stuff?
So here's how I do my crowd mic is I usually turn the sensitivity on a crowd mic, instead of turning that to 2 or 3 o'clock, I usually start that at like 9 or 10, because if I want that crowd mic, I don't want to hear everything that mic picks up, if that makes a sense. I want to hear just kind of general ambient sound. So I usually start that at like 9 or 10. And then what I do is I turn the compressor on my crowd mic down, almost completely off, in fact, because what that will do is, like I said, that compressor, it's going to try to bump up anything that's quiet, and it's going to suppress anything that gets loud. So when it's quiet in your gym, if you have that compressor turned all the way up and you're trying to compress everything, it's actually going to keep trying to increase the volume on that channel. And you're going to, at some point in a game, you're probably going to end up with that crowd mic drowning out your announcers. So I usually turn the compression down, I turn the sensitivity down, and then I can have a little more fine tuning with the volume. That's how I can, and I try to test it, right when we set up, so that, and I usually crank it up real quick so that I can hear that something's coming through, and then I turn it down, and I do that with the gain, and then I do that with the volume as well. I turn it all the way up. Okay, I can hear something, I can start to hear that hiss, and then I back it down. And then I usually try to do it at least one more time as people are getting in there. And also that kind of goes back to the person listening to Wirecast throughout the game. They need to be able to recognize, okay, I'm hearing a lot more crowd noise than I normally do. I need to check that setting, or I need to mention something to our announcer about that. But that's definitely something to usually monitoring the audio is, if you go to a full production, that's one guy, that's all he's doing is monitoring audio, right? But in most of our setups with the Wirecast stuff, just something to kind of check throughout the game. Cool. Anything else today? Everybody's quiet. All right. Well, with that, I'm going to stop the recording. Wirecast Wednesday. Sarah, What are we giving away?
What are we giving away?
Are we giving away something next week?
Yep. So next week we're giving a small microphone for your phone. It's a Rode microphone. And so in order to be entered into that contest, you need to submit some content about what's coming up. So like a video about maybe a game that's coming. I'm almost positive this is correct. I email it every week, but it's just a really small piece of content to even be entered in. We only have, I think, 3 people entered in right now. So let me pull that up just to double check, or I can send an email to you guys. But we will be drawing next Wednesday on this Wirecast Wednesday.
Here it is. There it is. So it plugs into your phone, and it's a Rode video mic. Mic me. It says iPhone up there. If you have an iPhone like that, you got to have your lovely little dongle. So it basically works on the 3.5 millimeter, I believe. Anyway, so these a microphone like this would be real handy if you're creating some content just on a cell phone, but you need better audio.
Right.
Next week. So just create some content about something that's coming up. Right.
So I just posted it in the group chat, 30 to 60 second video. And then if you post it on social media and you tag us, I'll definitely see it. But if you forget to tag us, email it to me too. And then we can kind of keep a document of everybody's stuff. So not super hard, and you have a chance to win a microphone. So it kind of sounds like a win-win.
And for those of you that followed along with our stuff, we recommend Rode for like any microphone. My big old one that I record all my podcasts on is a Rode. Look at that horse. Rodes are awesome. So it's a good microphone, and send in your videos. So I think that's it for this week. So thanks to everyone that tuned in. And if you're watching on the dashboard, if you got any other questions, Eric at strive.tv, we'll take a look. So